Can you beat Deltarune Chapters 1 and 2 without dodging? Hey there guys, NovemberJoy here, and welcome to the Reptile Rumble! Deltarune is shaping up to be a very interesting game to surpass Undertale in almost every way. We've only got 2 chapters, and it's already longer than Undertale. The combat, though, is similar and different at the same time, adding standard JRPG party dynamics into Undertale's Touhou beats Shin Megami Tensei formula. I've gotten a few requests for this challenge already, so you might have seen this coming. Let's keep the Toby train rolling and find out if you can beat both currently released chapters of Deltarune without dodging. Before we go any further, I'd like to give a special thanks to Skip the Tutorial for trying this with Chapter 1, and an extra special thanks to Gordon CMB for doing Chapter 2 and helping encourage me to try my own spin on both chapters. Check them out, you might enjoy their content. Anyway, for this one, the rules are similar to the Undertale run. Don't move while we're being attacked in a fight, and don't use major glitches or exploits. However, there are some important differences. First of all, we're allowed to move as long as we're not actually in the battle screen. What I define as the battle screen is this, with visible HP bars and commands, which is the layout for every actual battle in the game. If I tried to not move at any time where there are bullets, I wouldn't even be able to make it to the first battle. Secondly, we're allowed to push other buttons during the enemy turn, just not allowed to move. There are 2 specific fights where this is an absolute necessity, because we just don't have quite as many options as in Undertale. As for optional challenges, I'd like to beat at least one of the secret bosses without dodging, and I'd also like to do it while recruiting every enemy type. With our rules and optional challenges out of the way, let's get into the run. First things first, we give ourselves the most fitting name possible, and get ready for school. Kris can't dodge Susie's locker slam attack, but thankfully she won't finish us off. As we descend into the Dark World, we have a mostly uneventful walk before Tingle starts attacking us with spades. Yeah, stuff like this is why I'm allowing myself to move outside of battle to dodge. We escape, only to wind up in a fight with him. My strategy was just to compliment and then defend until he runs out of fuel. Not that it matters, since this fight is so easy and short anyway. Ralsei gives us a tutorial on how to dodge, which we fail. Wait, I didn't even do anything! I guess he's just too sweet to be honest with us. In the Field of Hopes and Dreams, the enemies there can definitely hurt us, but Kris and Ralsei together can actually get a lot done in one turn, and take plenty of punishment too. As a result, none of the encounters here are especially dangerous. I give the white ribbon to Ralsei because I'm legally required to, then appreciate this encounter that we can no-hit before Susie makes our pacifist run harder. As in the Undertale run, gear is a lot more important in this run than ever, although I'm only getting defensive gear for now. Healing items are also very important. After I picked the best name for my team, I realized I was woefully unprepared and had to backtrack across the board to grab a bunch of burgers from McSham's before facing K-Round. K-Round is an interesting fight because it shows off just how strong our extra turns are. I can use Kris and Ralsei's turns together to bow, or just have Kris bow and Ralsei heal, and we're making progress either way. With that, and K-Round giving us a free turn by practicing self-care, this one wasn't too difficult, although I definitely needed those healing items. After the fight, Susie joins Lancer, so we're left with just Kris and Ralsei again. We get to solve puzzles for them, sample Lancer's treasured stump salsa, pick the death machine I want to kill me out of the catalog. It's like we're really friends. The enemies along the way weren't too much of a problem. Even Clover wasn't a problem. All I had to do was read Ralsei's manual to her and she was easily spared. Might have been a little harder if I didn't know that trick though. A little forest exploration later, we make it up to the Lancer and Susie fight. This fight could be a problem if it weren't so short. All we have to do is put Susie to sleep with Ralsei's song, and then keep anything with Kris while Ralsei defends or uses items. Lancer's damage output is generally nothing to be scared of, and soon we'll give him all the compliments he needs to stop fighting. Susie then asserts her dominance by beating up Lancer without moving at all. I didn't know she was doing a challenge run too. The castle's got tougher enemies that can deal threatening amounts of damage, but thankfully their sparing methods are still pretty easy. This was when I decided to try fulfilling one of my optional objectives. I did give it a serious try, but Jevil really doesn't look like a fight that's possible to win, no matter what your tactics are. Let's go in depth on this one. Finishing the fight requires you to use pirouette and hypnosis acts to progress through each phase until he gets tired, or just beat all 3,500 HP out of him and take his lunch money. I already knew beating him up was the harder route, but even trying to tire him out requires us to survive a long time, and his attacks are deadly. He starts the fight with spread shots, which hit us 4 times, and can't miss because they directly aim at our soul. They'll immediately take down any party member that isn't Susie, even if everyone defends. Next up is this circular spade attack. It aims for the center of the box, where our soul is automatically placed, so this one really hurts as well. These hearts have a chance to miss, but they'll still hit twice on average. His next attack is also his worst. The Devil's Knife hits 5 times and deals an insane amount of damage per hit. Your team needs to be at or near full health to even survive. Once we're past that, we're kinda stuck. All we can do is constantly chug healing items, so I've never been able to have Kris act often enough to get past phase 1 and progress the fight. It might be possible to at least get to phase 2, but I didn't want to put too much time in when I knew I couldn't last long enough to win. There's no way around it. In Chapter 1, the stats and gear available to us just suck too much for us to beat Jevil in this challenge. Okay, let's get back on track. Next obstacle is the rematch with K round. Honestly, this is kinda easier than the first match, since we only need 3 perfect throws to win the fight. Kris did go down, but all it took was a couple of burgers to get them back up and win immediately afterwards. Now, it's been very smooth sailing up to this point, with only one unfortunate bump, right? Well, turns out King is our next speed bump. Admittedly, I made the fight a lot harder than I needed it to be, since I was trying to smuggle the cake, the club sandwich, and both revive mints into Chapter 2. You never realize how useful the item storage is until you don't have it. The fight starts out pretty smoothly with a few spade attacks and acting to get access to dual heal, but the chain changes everything. It's not a problem when he tries to whip the box into a stream of bullets, since we usually slip through the gaps even without moving at all. The problem shows up when he puts spikes on the sides of the box. We can't move inside the box, so we'll just be pushed around by the spiky walls of the box, tanking hits the entire time. This attack, where he fires chains directly at us, also really hurts. All this, combined with the length of the fight, meant I finally had a real challenge that wasn't Jevil. Characters were going down pretty frequently, even with burgers and liberal use of dual heal, and I actually used one of my revive mints. Looking back, I was far enough along that I could have survived without it, but I wanted to play it safe. But the important thing is, I did defeat him and brought Chapter 1 to a close. Kris was understandably very angry at all the unnecessary pain we put everyone through, so they put us in timeout for a while. After we learned our lesson, no we didn't, we're off to the new castle town, also known as Cripple Town. What an odd name. While we're here, I decided to check out the dojo and see what we could do. The Spare and Pacify tutorial was possible, as expected, and the Grace tutorial was definitely not possible, also as expected. Taking on Clover, however, was actually a lot harder than I anticipated. I'd never had to try guessing the answers with only Kris before, so it took a lot of trial and error. Taking the fight on with no healing items was a mistake, but I didn't want to use what I saved from Chapter 1, and I didn't have any money to buy anything else. It took a few tries, but I did eventually luck my way through and get the club sandwich from her. Before we left, I checked over here and found the Jevil's Tail? And the Shadow Crystal too? I didn't realize it at the time. I thought Jevil was just being a good sport because we went to the trouble of freeing him, but it was actually because I defeated Jevil in a previous save file. I don't think it was necessary for any strategies, so I hope it's not too much of a problem for you guys. Don't worry, I did get the most important item. One traffic jam later, we end up in the cyber world, just in time for our first encounter with 2 werewires. They're not a threat with our increased stats, though. Hilariously, I messed around with not dodging in this sliding section, and I somehow managed to die. I didn't even know you could die there. I guess Kris wasn't a fan of the music. Most of the enemies in the cyber field aren't too bad. Even the fight with Sweet Captain Cakes doesn't have anything challenging. They don't deal that much damage, and it only takes a few turns before Susie figures out how to dance. Once we're past this teacup section, though, we have an actual fight ahead of us. Berdly. Berdly's packing some good attack power, as expected, and his attacks are very good at nailing our stationary soul for big damage. The best strategy for this fight is caution. If anyone's HP is low enough for them to go down in 2 hits, they need healing. While we do have lots of HP and more actions per turn due to having party members, we need to avoid having anyone go down at all costs. Because getting people up from the floor is costly for our item stock if we get them up immediately, and costly for our turns if we wait for them to get up naturally. There's that, and the win conditions. It's not like other fights in the past where we can win in a handful of turns easily, or just wait for the fight to end. We actually have to keep bumping Falco's car, and it takes a lot of bumps. He does, thankfully, have a break attack, where his homework can sometimes miss and give you more time to heal or bump him. I ate a lot of bagels, but I eventually bumped him out of my way. Now, after some storyline and a throwaway fight with pop-ups, we've got Noelle instead of Ralsei and Susie. Not only are we short one person, but Noelle's got lower stats than even Ralsei, so we might have to babysit her a bit. Of course, I couldn't resist annoying her with mice. After all, it's just a hilarious prank, right? Okay. Note to self. Never annoy Noelle again. Well, once we're past that, we get to deal with enemies again, and Noelle's low stats make things a bit more difficult. That's not to say she's useless, though. Her unique acts and sleep mist are still pretty useful. Only having Noelle and Kris does make other things more noticeable, though, like how these mice camp on top of your soul for plenty of damage. As soon as I was able to buy more bagels, I did exactly that, because I knew fights were only going to get harder from here. Toby destroyed me, but it's fine because I found moss afterwards and mossed out my HP. It's smooth sailing from there until we meet up with Barley again in this alleyway. Burger is a lot more difficult in this second fight, mainly for one reason. We're not playing with a full deck. We're still stuck with Noelle, and she's still pretty weak. The attacks are similar. In fact, they're a little better, mostly because this wind attack lets us graze a surprising amount of TP while it beats us up. It's good that it's there because we need to keep enough TP to cast Sleep Mist as soon as possible when a couple of werewires join the fight. Then, it's just a race to get his mercy meter up to 100% before we run out of stamina, which we actually won on the first try because I came prepared. Of course, I immediately had to head back and grab more bagels, because you already know what's coming up next. Yep, it's the small shot himself, Spamton. This fight just gives us a lot of pain. And I mean a lot of pain. We've only got Kris for this battle, so we're stuck constantly healing from his endless avalanches of advertising. However, there is one act that helps us a lot: Heal Deal. This lets us heal half our HP while making a deal to progress the fight. If this wasn't an option, this one would have been a whole lot more difficult. As it is, we just have to stand there munching bagels while slowly grinding TP from his attacks and beating us up until we can make another heal deal. The F1 heal does help us save time, but it's not strictly necessary to make the final deal. Once we do, we've got a bunch of minigames and storyline ahead of us. There are a couple of fights, but any difficulty they had was just from me playing sloppily. Long story short, we meet back up with the main Lancer fan club, walk across some skyscrapers, and get captured by Mega Man X capsules before escaping into the main mansion area. Now that we're here, we've got a bunch of fights ahead of us. First things first, Swatchlings. They can deal good damage, but it's nothing we can't handle. Task Manager, the resident furry bait of the game, could have posed a challenge if answering her questions correctly didn't immediately start her fight with 100% mercy. Mouse Wheel is very simple. Either you fill its mercy meter in your first 2 turns, or you die from its most powerful attack patterns. You might get a 3rd turn if you're lucky, but thankfully, I didn't need to. Wire hits very hard and fast, and takes a lot of acting to spare, but it's still fast enough that you don't need items if you're picking your actions carefully. We get separated and end up riding through an acid river with Ralsei, dodging the banana in the process, and then challenge comes in the least likely form I'd ever imagined it. Rules card. Honestly, it's not that hard. I just made bad decisions during the fight and during Chapter 1 while designing the machine he's riding. The machine I gave him ensures that he'll hit us hard with every single attack. I could have trivialized this fight completely by giving him a duck, and now I'm paying for my sins against all of duckdom. First, I decided to try beating him up because I thought it'd be funny. Bad idea, he's got too much HP for that. Then, I decided to just defend and heal and wait for him to declare a win once I was unable to take any more houses. This didn't work because he decided to prolong my suffering as long as possible by taking every house on the map, so my limited healing just wasn't enough. The winning strategy was the most obvious one. Just play his game, make a beeline down to the corner where he starts, then block him off and end the fight early. As I said, this was only hard because I was dumb. The game also crashed a couple of times for some reason. Maybe that was his grand plan all along. Once we're past there, we get to watch Noelle cast Chokegrave, and the whole gang's back together just in time to fight Queen. I have to say, I'm very thankful for Ralsei's dual heal, because it saw a lot of use in this fight. We actually have a lot of barriers in the way. Not only do we have a chicken nugget to free from Queen's control, but we also have to deal with Queen putting up barriers to halt our progress. Most of her attacks will hit us several times without fail, that's no question, but carrying around plenty of juice and making liberal use of dual heal will make this fight relatively easy. With our improved stats and abilities, this fight definitely ended up easier than King, even with Queen also turning our bullet box against us. The best part though was her final attack. Yeah, that happened, and she was out of there once it did. We're out of there too. We still have some unfinished business to take care of. I did some of the basement stuff earlier, including the famous Teacups of Doom, so now all that's left is to put Spamton into the disc and give him the body he's always dreamed of. Of course, we need plenty of preparation beforehand. I picked this encounter to grind money from since it's right next to a save point and a warp door. With that, I bought a whole bunch of gear and butler juice, equipped Kris with the mannequin to get 30% damage resistance, and then I was ready for the trials ahead. I actually made one mistake during my preparations by buying Big Shot bow ties instead of buying frayed bow ties from Spamton's shop, but it's not too much of a difference. So, here we are, Spamton Neo, the biggest shot of all. And we're gonna beat him without even moving. This fight has shades of Metaton beyond just being a mechanical enemy who you fight with the yellow soul power. We also need a good turn-by-turn strategy, all the items we stashed from Chapter 1, and a little luck too, even if we are allowed to shoot this time. There are 2 ways to beat Spamton Neo. Either we snap all of his strings, or we just beat him up and take his lunch money. For once, the pacifist method of snapping all his strings is actually the slower method, so we're going to choose full violence. It took a lot of tries, and I even changed Rolsei's equipment around so he'd be better at attacking, but here's how the fight went. First turn, I have everyone fight. Landing crits is super important since they deal 20% more damage. The first attack is lines of heads, and already we get a little bit of RNG. They will always target Kris for every hit, and they can either hit 3 or 4 times. If they hit 4 times, Kris will go down, and we're best off restarting. If we only take 3 hits, we can have Kris drink some juice and keep Susie and Rolsei on full offensive. Next up is the spam melee attack, and this one's also partially RNG with where the gaps appear. We do want to save our revivements, but we'll need to use them if anyone goes down. In a fight like this, we have no time to lose waiting for anyone to get up naturally. Whenever we have at least 50% TP, we need to throw out Rude Buster. That extra damage is necessary to survive. Next up is this heart attack, where every hit spreads damage across the entire party. We need to time our shots well and hope that its shots miss us as much as possible. This is what we saved those club sandwiches for, so let's savor the flavor. Next up is a Pippi's attack, and this is one of his best attacks. We actually have a chance to avoid damage by shooting them as they come. Sometimes though, he'll shoot them at an angle where they never come down into our line of fire. We can try to catch them right as they come out of the cannon, but it's very tricky to time. Next up is a phone call attack, and this one's not too bad either. We'll take 2 hits, but we can keep him from dealing any more by repeatedly shooting him. We're continuing to whittle down his HP when he whips out his face attack, and this is one of his worst ones. We'll take 5 hits from this one just because the eye won't stop shooting directly at us. We can shoot and destroy the nose and just about hit the mouth while it's firing, but the eye is just out of reach. That attack really hurts and is almost guaranteed to leave someone down, so of course he follows it up with a faster heart attack. We're usually hurting pretty bad by this point, but we also have Spamton's HP getting lower too. His next attack is terrible, a harder version of his first attack where you're guaranteed to take 5 hits. From here, he'll use harder versions of previous attacks, and I ended up violating my own advice. Susie repeatedly went down from bad targeting RNG, and I actually waited for her to get up naturally. By the time she did get up, I was near death with max TP, so I used my top cake and got ready to bust some rudeness, but Kris went down to the next attack. Our goal is to get his HP to 30% or below. This starts his final attack pattern, and we've got a good shot to win if we survive his next attack. I didn't think Susie could survive, but somehow she pulled through 1 hit away from death with a bullet just inches away from ending her. Okay, now it's a lone Susie with no healing against the super boss. This is a definite loss, right? Actually, no. This is part of the reason I really wanted to get his HP below 30%. He'll waste a turn getting shot by his own heads, which I use to throw another Rude Buster, and then he'll use his Power of Neo attack. Too bad for him though, this attack only deals percentage-based damage, so our low HP Susie is only taking 1 damage from all these hits. After that, he's all the way down to 6% HP, and I use the last tool I have left in the toolbox, pressing F1 for help. That gets everyone back on their feet, and 1 full group attack is enough to take down the last of his HP with the skin of our teeth. Trust me, if he'd gotten 1 more turn, he would have ended us. This was a pretty exhilarating battle, and I'm glad to know it's completely possible to beat him. With that, I think our optional challenge of beating one of the secret bosses is complete. After that ordeal, we need to grind again and stock up on Butler Juice because we've got something else coming our way, Giga Queen. This one is very different from the rest of our run just because this fight is completely different from the rest of the game. We can't dodge a single one of Queen's punches and kicks, and they'll nail us right in the face every time, so all we have to rely on is counterpunching her as often as we can. Anytime our HP is above half or so, we need to take a swing at her ourselves to speed things along. Otherwise, just keep chugging butt juice and weathering the storm. This one's just a battle of attrition. We actually need to get good at nailing every single counterpunch we can, because even a full inventory of butt juice and using self-fix every time we can is barely enough to last if we're doing everything right. This one did take several tries, but if we're persistent, we can eventually succeed at beating Giga Queen and turning the Punch-Out homage into Rock'em Sock'em robots. We're not quite done yet, though. We still have to return and check out Castletown. We have 2 more challenges at the dojo to try. The Task Manager one requires that we dodge her attacks, so it's not possible, but the Chapter 2 All-Stars actually is. I'll admit it, I got lazy, reloaded my save from before I beat Giga Queen dodgeless, then fought her normally to keep all the juice for this fight. I could have grinded for a little bit to buy more juice, but I just wanted to find out if this fight was possible. Thankfully, it is. We are on constant acting and sparing duty until we reach the finale with 2 wire-wires. This is what we need the healing items for. These guys just deal way too much damage, even with our increased stats, if we don't have any. I had to use 4 butt juices, but I was able to spare both of them and confirm that 3 out of the 5 dojo challenges are currently possible dodgeless. With that, we head home with Susie in tow. Kris goes to fight the car super boss alone, loses, then a new fountain gets created, and credits roll. This challenge is officially complete. I also managed to recruit everyone, so that's both optional challenges completed. I gotta say, that was a lot easier than Undertale was, but I still got some fun out of it. My favorite fight was definitely Spam Ton Neo, just because it was the hardest and most strategic fight that was still possible. You can bet that when the rest of the game releases, I'll see what I can do to beat it dodgeless. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Plunge your blade into the subscribe button for more weird challenges like this, or check the hyperlink blocked for more cool content. Until then, I'll see you guys next time on the Reptile Rumble.